be careful. That's a phrase that I found myself saying on more than one occasion this past week. You see, it's been spring break at our house, and I have watched my family jet off in various directions. My oldest son, Caleb, he's about to graduate high school. He took off to Costa Rica on a school-sponsored trip, while the rest of my crew, they headed down to Florida to spend some time in the sun. Now, unfortunately, I had some obligations here at home, which kept me from joining them. So for the first time ever, I've watched my clan go away without me. Now, I'm the designated worrier in our house. Any of you out there fill that role in your family? And if so, then you'll understand where I'm coming from when I tell you that I've been on edge this entire week. And this little phrase, all right, be careful, it has come out of my mouth on numerous occasions. For example, Sherry and the kids, they were taken off to the airport last Sunday and they were going late. It was 9 p.m. And I know that my wife gets tired driving at night. And so what do you think were the words that came out of my mouth? Sherry, please be careful. Or Caleb, he was walking out the door Tuesday morning to fly to an exotic country for the first time. And I'm a little bit nervous about this. And so Caleb, please be careful. And then of course there was the text he sent me on Friday evening. It was a picture of a neon frog. It was taken from close range, but the caption beside it read, "That's a poisonous dart frog. One touch from it will kill you. Oh yeah, we actually almost stepped on it." So as I was running to find a paper bag to hyperventilate in, I texted back, "Caleb, please be careful." So maybe it's because I found myself saying it so much this week. It's that little phrase, it jumped out at me as I began looking at Colossians 2, because you see, in that chapter, Paul tells us the exact same thing. Be careful. Now, a quick point of clarification before we read what Paul writes. Those two little words, be careful, they can function in two ways. First, they can operate as a request, right? I mean, that's how I was using them. Because, I mean, let's be honest. Saying the words is probably not going to make any difference in the situation. It's just a token expression that us warriors say for our own peace of mind. It's like, I've told him to be careful, so that's going to make everything okay. However, be careful, it can also function as a warning. You know, a warning that contains critical information for our well-being. So for example, I hope that as my son, who, like most teenage boys, makes some questionable decisions at times, I hope as he was starting to trek through the Costa Rican rainforest that there was someone there, a guide who was familiar with the terrain, who knew what they were doing, that gave a be careful speech. You know, a warning to prepare the group for the potentially dangerous things they might encounter so that they would be on high alert. When be careful is used as a warning, really what it means is that you and I better pay attention, because if you don't, there could be some severe consequences. And what we're going to see is that these little words, be careful, we find them in Colossians 2. Paul is giving us a warning that we need to pay attention to, a be careful speech. And this is what he says. Therefore, as you have received Christ Jesus the Lord, walk in him, rooted and built up in him, and established in the faith, just as you were taught, overflowing with gratitude. Now, here it is. Be careful. Be careful that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deceit that's based on human tradition, based on the elemental forces of the world, and not based on Christ. And so did you catch what Paul told us to be careful about? I mean, he's warning us to be on high alert for incorrect ideas that are deceptively empty. And we might just listen and hear this and think, you know what? How dangerous could a bad idea be? But according to Paul, the threat of such thoughts, it's on the level of being kidnapped. I mean, it's that serious. Now, here's why I think it's so serious. Because these dangerously hollow values and viewpoints that Paul speaks about here, they are enticingly subtle, they are hard to spot, and they will ultimately leave you and I empty and in despair. I mean, let's just think about it from the perspective of the kidnapping analogy that Paul speaks about, or the imagery he uses. It's not the people that are acting obviously suspicious and creepy that we should really worry about, right? At least, I mean, and here's what I mean by that. Hopefully most of us are intelligent enough and aware enough to just avoid these types of people when we see them. I mean, the people that pose the greatest threat to our well-being are the ones that look and act normal, even enticing. It's around these types of people that it's easy to let our guard down and to be taken in. And I think it's the same way with ideas. You see, it's not the obviously bad ideas that pose the greatest danger in drawing us in. We just discount those. No, it's the attractive ones, the ones that make nice-sounding promises that are deceptively empty. They're the ones that want to capture us. And it's these kind of beliefs that prey on people. It's these kind of beliefs that lure you and me in and take us where we don't want to go. And while the specific nature of these types of deceitful philosophies, I mean, it can differ from age to age. The specifics might differ from culture to culture. The origin and the substance of all of these false ideas is the same. They're all incorrect worldviews that come from a broken and limited perspective. The wisdom might sound good, but it comes from a flawed creation that is estranged from God and in need of restoration. And so here's the question. How can we identify these dangerously deceitful mentalities so that we can keep our guard up? And you know, as I've studied and I've thought about this, I would say that here is kind of how we can start recognizing these types of philosophies. I would say that any way of thinking or living that competes with Jesus for our loyalty and our affection, that is a deceitful and dangerous philosophy. Because you see, for those of us who've chosen to follow Jesus, there should be no other rivals to Him when it comes to the role of leader. And yet I think we all know what it's like to be enticed to follow other things and to be feeling the pull of devoting ourselves to them as if they had this godlike status over us. I mean, just think about where we spend our time and where our thoughts drift when we have time to daydream. In fact, I would say that it's this that is the greatest challenge of following Jesus. I call it the lure of lesser things. And the lure of lesser things, it's that untrustworthy enticement inside each of us that pulls our attention and our affection away from the things that are truly ultimate and truly meaningful. It pulls us toward temporary trinkets that in the grand scheme of it all, they really just don't matter. I mean, you know, they're lesser things. And if that weren't enough, this lure of lesser things, this inner giant, it tag teams with our desire and tendency to care about the judgment and opinions and applause of those in the world, as opposed to the judgment, opinion, and applause of really the only one that matters, the ultimate one. And this defective way of thinking, it manifests itself in countless ways in each of us. I mean, this faulty philosophy can even take good things and it can warp them to work against us. And so I just want to share, this is how I've kind of seen this play out in my life recently. I want to share, I guess, get a little personal with you. Prior to coming to Anacortes, I was a high school teacher and a soccer coach for about 20 years. I loved both of those things. One of the things I've missed most since my time coming here has been just being called coach. Because you see, out on the field, in the midst of a team, that's been where I felt most like myself and where I really believe God has most effectively used me to minister to young people over the years. So this year, I've been given the amazing opportunity to become the head boys coach of the soccer program at Anacortes High School. And I truly feel that God has allowed me this opportunity to just extend the ways that He wants to use me to minister to young people in this community. You know, like we say in our mission statement, to transform lifeless spaces into life-giving places through Jesus. But here's the thing. You see, even though I believe without a shadow of a doubt that God has placed me here to use me for His glory, this has been a daily struggle. I've daily struggled with being pulled towards lesser things. You know, things that in the bigger picture really don't matter all that much. Things like win-loss records or my image and what other people think of me. You know, it's been a continual struggle for me to not sacrifice what's meaningful for what's trivial. And it's really taken me having to continually refix my eyes on Jesus instead of worldly success and applause. It's taking me having to ask myself over and over again, what is the why of what I'm doing? You see, I think this might be the key to recognizing when we might be taken in by empty and hollow philosophies that are based on standards and values of this broken world. It's the why. When the why of what you and I do becomes anything other than Jesus, then we've crept into dangerous territory. And here's the intriguing thing. It's the crazy thing that I'm discovering. It's when my why starts being pulled towards things like human acknowledgement or applause or worldly success, when it gets pulled in that direction instead of the approval of Jesus, I mean, that's when I find myself feeling the most empty. That's when coaching suddenly becomes more of a burden than a joy, because things like my fear of failing or having my image tarnished or feeling insignificant because I didn't do a good enough job, it's when those things, start to happen because I didn't live up to people's expectations of me. That's when I feel the most empty and the most stressed and the most anxiety. But here's the deal. When my gaze is directed towards the applause of Jesus, all of a sudden my role as coach becomes so full and freeing and fulfilling and meaningful. Because you see, Jesus doesn't ask for my success. He just asks for my faithfulness. And what I found is that when I'm there in that spot, He does things that blow my small-time expectations out of the water. And I just feel like as Christ followers, if we are going to avoid this trap of chasing after empty ambitions, then we need to continually refixate our eyes on what is ultimate, on what really matters, on the one who really matters. And just like the writer of Hebrews wrote, he says, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. You see, it's only in doing this that you and I move beyond just like merely giving an intellectual head nod to the truth about Jesus. And we move into the place where His truth and His Spirit, it fills us and it flows through us and it completely shapes how we think and what we do. And when you and I do that, we find that the shallow dust of what this world offers is nothing in comparison to the joy and fulfillment that comes from being rooted